Welcome to the BZen Wellness Podcast, where we journey through personal stories of transformation and resilience.
This is a space for us to share insights from our experiences and the wisdom of the experts and mentors who have guided us.
I'm your host, Jonah Boersma, certified life and relationship coach.
And I'm your host, Brittany Boersma, registered yoga teacher, breathwork facilitator, and ceremonialist.
If you're enthusiastic about personal development, you're in the right place.
Let's dig in.
Hello, dear hearts. We're here with my good buddy, Archie. And before we begin, I would just love to take a collective breath together, all of us. Let's just have a deep inhale and exhale, sigh it all out. Y'all, I'm so excited. Archie Montemayor is a native Austinite who developed a strong passion for professional paintballing as a teenager. Dedicating tens of thousands of hours to his craft, he is considered one of the best to ever play the sport. Traveling all over Europe and North America, he's a 3-time World Cup champion and winner of multiple MVP awards. World champion, y'all. Archie strongly believes the pursuit of mastery is a fulfilling journey and provides great insight into yourself and the world. Outside of paintball, his interests include maximum enjoyment, dancing, personal development, philosophy, golf, and spending and enjoying quality time with his wife and doggos. Archie.
How's it going?
Good, dude. It's so good to have you here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining and making the time to be here and sit with me and have this conversation.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, no, we have a lot of great chats. I'm looking forward to this one.
We do have a lot of great chats. Archie and I met along with our wives through a good friend at Burning Man a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And what I noticed most about Archie at that burn was the dude just laughed his ass off at everything. Granted, our friend who introduced us is hilarious. So it makes sense that he was laughing so often because there was, there's a lot of shenanigans happening out there and it was just straight comedy. But I just noticed like, wow, this dude just laughs so much. Like he really does get a kick out of life. And I appreciated that so much about you because in an environment like that, my silly fully comes out. Like I just love to play and be weird and just, heckle.
It's a good place for it, yeah.
And you just like kind of joined right along in. And I was just like, this dude is great. I love him. Something about him just really like drew me in. Mm-hmm. And since then, we have developed and blossomed this really cool friendship. We don't always live in the same town, but we've managed to maintain a really cool connection through phone calls where we spend, it feels like at least an hour every time we talk on the phone, just like catching up on life, talking about important topics to us, talking about current events that we find ridiculous or humorous or just things that are important. And it really is important to me. It feels really impactful for me to have another man, a brother in my life that I can just be real with and have some depth in conversation. It's something that I really crave is depth in my male relationships. And I feel like there's a lot of men that I encounter that are a little bit guarded or aren't as willing to like open up and take things to a deep level. And it's something that you and I have been able to really just gracefully ease into this amazing, beautiful depth. And so I'm really appreciative of that.
Likewise. Yeah. It's one of my favorite new friends for sure. And it's been a lovely time the past few years. Also,
it's not often that you're in the presence of a world champion, which like, that's pretty freaking cool. I'll never forget like learning that you were a professional paintballer because I've played paintball like once in my life. And what I remember about it was that I sucked. I was not good. It hurt. I was getting blasted up left and right. I was just covered in paint by the end of it and had all kinds of welts all over my body. But it just hadn't really been in like my awareness, my field of awareness for a long time. And I was like, well, people play that professionally. And it's like there's a cult following. Like people love paintball. If you're into it, you are into it.
It's a very niche sport, and I like kind of relate it to like skateboarding in the 80s where, like if you're into it, you're like in it, and obviously we haven't blown up or anything like that. But But yeah, it is an interesting thing. It's always fun for me to explain it or even talk about it. Or, sometimes, people have a friend that plays paintball and then they go and ask a little bit more about it. And then like, oh, yeah, I know that guy. It's just it's a funny thing whenever the kind of worlds collide and you meet somebody and then you tell them about that and they're kind of waking up and understanding it a little bit better.
Yeah. I remember we were at our friend's house in Eugene for the Apana Fest, our friends, for
week.
This annual get-together, weekender. And Archie and his wife, Hannah, joined us. And my friend Andy, who hosts this at his place, was like, dude, I was telling my son like who all was at the party. And I told him Hannah and Archie were here and his son is into paintballing. And he was like, yeah. And Archie's a professional paintballer. And his son was like, no way. Is it Archie Montemayor? Get out of here. And he was just like tripped out, which is so like cool to just recognize that you've got some super fans.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. Honestly, it's been neat. And it's just such a like not natural thing from my normal life, to be at these events and the way in which people come up and yeah, you're talking about fans, and like taking pictures, signing autographs. And it's really cool. And it's nice to, in a way, to know you've touched people in a certain way or made them appreciate, the way in which you do something,
Yeah. So you got into it as a teenager.
Yeah, it was a friend's birthday party and they had been playing already for years and they were already playing like local tournaments as teenagers. And they were my friends and I went for one of their birthday parties and just immediately I was just hooked. And all I really wanted to do was get good enough to play with them at the tournaments they went to. So I just kind of was like, in a way obsessed and really wanted to just climb the ladder. And we were playing local tournaments all around the state. One of their dads is like our paintball dad, soccer dad kind of. He just drove us around. I mean, we had a blast, After about a year and a half, I got picked up on a semi-pro team. And then it was like I was playing national events.
How old were you?
14.
When you were on a semi-pro
14.
team?
No, I think I was 15. I think it was right before I got a car. So I was 15.
Wow.
Yeah. Actually, I won my first event with those guys in semi-pro. It was my second national big tournament. And kind of after that, I was luckily in a sponsorship situation, didn't really have to pay to play. And paintball's an expensive sport. Mm-hmm. So like that was a barrier I crossed really quickly. And then at that point, I was just still trying to become as good as I could be. And then slowly but surely climbed the ranks. And I helped turn a semi-pro team from San Antonio pro. And after that, it was kind of all she wrote. And so now I've been playing pro since 2006. So about, 18 years.
Wow. What's keeping you in it?
Right now, I would say the relationships. This is probably going to be my last year. I might play events or kind of guest in the future, but I'm not planning on doing like the full scale, like full season next year or anymore.
Wow.
But again, the relationships are everything for me. Like I've met some incredible people. I look up to almost everybody. Well, actually, I look up to everybody on my team, and I've been looking up to the guys that founded my team since I was 15 years old.
Totally.
The things we learn, it is a journey, and I think mastery in any subject is a serious journey and a fulfilling one. And, that's a lot of it. The competition aspect is very potent as well. It's like, it's my will against your will. And
right.
How am I going to show up? How am I going to respond? How hard am I actually trying to be the best? So there's a lot of different aspects into it. There's understanding like mental fortitude, understanding your emotional state while you're getting shot at. There's a lot of factors and variables, and I think that's what makes it so potent. It's unlike a lot of things, and it's definitely like an adrenaline rush, but also it's such a mental game, and that's what makes it, I think, like super addictive.
I think of professional athletes, and I know that there's just like there's a stop point for every professional athlete at some point. Mm-hmm. And being that you are so decorated as a professional paintballer, I'm like, man, I imagine it's probably just so fun and comes so natural to you at this point. There's obviously like a path to get to this place of mastery.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm trying to imagine what it's like to be a 14 or a 15-year-old young man and be surrounded by all of these other athletes in a sport that you are recently falling in love with and have so much to look up to, like so much to look forward to. There must have been so many challenges, so many hurdles, right? Like
Yeah.
shooting at people and getting shot at.
You know, it's funny because I haven't talked about like the beginning of my paintball story in a long time, but you know, I was a kid. I was a child, you know, I was a teenager. And the first like real serious team I got on was a bunch of 30-year-old men, you know, 30 and 35-year-old men, like serious, they're adults.
Yeah.
And I was the kid that was just like, I'm the bitch. you're going there, and if you don't shoot everybody, I'm yelling at you, you know? And like, that's tough for, certainly for like in a modern day, like that's just not really a thing anymore. And you had to have thick skin, and you had to, it was like, okay, what am I going to do? Like either absorb this and learn from this, or push myself to try to take what they're saying and use it as something that is for my benefit, or just kind of not be able to handle it and just fade out, you know? And I knew I didn't want to go that route with it, and I knew I really wanted to pursue it. So, you know, for some length of time, I had to be that kind of like chump on a good team and just kind of lick my wounds and learn, you know? And that was like, for me, that was the only way. And obviously that was like a pretty short-lived time in my career, because I did like get pretty good pretty quickly. But you know, it's funny when I think of that and I look at like the way in which, certainly in like athletics and the way kids are taught nowadays, it's just such a stark contrast from the way in which I kind of grew up learning paintball in a really harsh environment.
I can imagine. I mean, I'm definitely not a professional athlete by no means, but I played football my whole childhood and almost went to college to play football on scholarship and decided not to. But I mean, the environment that I was in a small town in Southern Oregon with the coaches that I had, like there was a lot of ass whooping.
Okay.
Not physically like literal ass whooping, but I mean, we got told off, we were reprimanded, we were disciplined, and it was harsh at times for sure, but it really did drive me to my own improvement and like strive to be better, in part because I had so much respect for my coaches and my teammates.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, because I still look at that method of coming up, and I really am grateful to have experienced it, you know, and I know it really allowed me to adapt and like also understand that like there are hardships in anything, and really it's just about getting past them and not really making them melt you, you know, and understanding that dynamic is an important lesson. And it's one that I've kind of taken with me probably throughout my career. And in a way, at some point I learned to be that hard, you know, antagonist for myself to get more out of myself, right? And that's kind of like the ego journey too, you know. It's like, that's actually, I think, what part of the becoming a master at anything is understanding how the ego works. And, you know, because part of it is being confident, but that will get you so far, and it certainly, if you put in the work and everything, you can get a long ways. But in order to be like a true master, you almost have to be playing the ego both ways, in the sense like confident, but also like telling yourself you're not anything yet, so that you can continue to push and learn more and figure things out at a much deeper level than a lot of people will. Those harsh lessons as a teenager, I really took a lot from them and understood how to just honestly keep being hard on myself so that I could push the level.
Yeah, like it's a tactic for really giving yourself the motivation and the drive to continue to improve and strive for better.
Right, because you can get really good, but if you want to be like world class, you got to be so much more than good or even great. Like you have to understand every little detail, and when the circumstances align for certain things to happen, you know? So it's a problem that just goes on forever. And the more times you push yourself to understand the problem, you know, like the better your answers will be forever. And that's why I really resonate with like really high end athletes, because I in a way I know what it takes to do that. And it's a lot of it is a physicality and like the professional sports that we watch on TV, because those guys are like absolute specimens. But
Yeah.
outside of that, it's decision making. It's understanding all the things that it takes to be just a slight edge, you know, in important moments.
I'd love to hear, maybe you could come up with an example for me and for all of us of, you know, maybe something that was like a big fail for you that you had to really learn from in, you know, this pathway to mastery for yourself in the paintballing career.
So younger in my career, I turned professional with a group of my friends from Texas, and we were like a semi-pro team, and we had this like moniker called the best kids in Texas. There's actually a movie, there's like a documentary that followed us from a long time ago. It's on Amazon Prime, I think still. And basically we were kids on different amateur teams at the time, and we made a team of all our kids that were playing on the older teams at the time. And we played the circuit in semi-pro, and then we ended up turning pro as San Antonio X Factor.
Wow.
And on that team, I was, you know, like always one of the main guys, and like certainly like an on-field captain, and was very involved with the inner workings of the team and what we were going to be doing at all times, right? And I decided at one point to leave that team and go and play for who is my current team, but also has always been the best team ever, and it's San Diego Dynasty. And I went to go play on that team. And at this point in my career, I was a great paintball player, definitely a top player on my team. And we had won tournaments at a very young age, you know. But when I went to that team, I was nobody, basically. And the captain of the team, who's like one of my dearest friends now, Alex, was really hard on me. And it was just funny because I went from being the guy to not being the guy and kind of getting just dumped on. And even on that team, I was playing the majority of the points. I was one of the top guys on the team, but Alex was still pushing me. And in moments it was hard on me, right? And in moments it sucked. But that season actually allowed me to hit, actually just it got me past a plateau where I was a great like a top paintball player, and it actually allowed me to push myself to mastering all elements of being a top player. And that after that season is when I just kind of just kept on going, and that was when I separated myself from the pack of all the other professional players. That was hard. It was tough. It sucked in moments. And yet now I'm looking at that like 7-8 month window of time as like the most pivotal moment of my career, because it allowed me to get outside of myself and look at my game in a new way, which then allowed me to learn so much more.
I'm still kind of thinking back, or thinking about what it must have been like for you in those early years, you know, before you moved into semi-pro, professional, and like, you know, moving to your current team, Dynasty. Like there's been this obvious trajectory of improvement. And what's coming to mind for me right now is I met your family at your wedding. And I think about my own family and my journey through, you know, my sports endeavors as a teenager, how much support my parents gave me and my siblings. And I'm just curious what it was like for you. Like, what kind of support did you get from your family as you were moving into this new passion, and then obviously like improving and getting really good at it? I'm so curious about that, just because I've met your parents and they seem so sweet.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, early on when I first started playing, the first couple of years, my parents are very supportive. They've been supportive for pretty much, you know, almost everything in my life. And for that, you know, that was my hobby, and they really knew I was really into it. I loved it. And, you know, I for the most part, stayed out of trouble too. So it was easy for them to support something that was a positive outlet for me. And so, yeah, they definitely, as a teenager, I was explaining that, paintball is an expensive sport, an expensive hobby for sure. And they financially supported that, at least for the first few years. And for the most part, as long as I was, staying out of trouble, doing well in school, they were kind of really supportive on it. Once I kind of started getting a little more serious, and then the real conflict is once you get to like outside of high school age, because then you're talking about college, and I'm at this point I was traveling all over the world to play paintball. So, there's a big conflict there, and my parents really wanted me to go to school, and I did not want to do that. So there's a little bit of a bubble there, but I think once they realized that what I was doing was definitely unique, but also special, they kind of got behind it. And now, like, I love, my parents come to probably 3 or 4 tournaments a year, and it's awesome. There's nothing greater than winning a tournament with your parents there. It's hard to win tournaments. And so, like, when the family's there, you have really non-paintball friends and family. It makes an event like especially special.
Yeah.
At the last tournament, my dad, he's a musician as like a hobby, but that's like a true passion of his. And he plays several instruments, but we were playing a semifinal game or a quarterfinal game at the last tournament. And before the game starts, we're talking like 20 seconds till the buzzer goes off, he starts playing a song on his trumpet in the VIP. So like, and we're playing my former team, so they all know it's my dad playing the trumpet before our game. It was just like kind of like a rally call. It was just so funny. I remember laughing there at the beginning of the first point. Just like, oh my God, I didn't know he was going to do that, but it's funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was good. It was a tight game. I'm thinking the trumpet was what saved us on that one.
You guys won.
Yeah, we won the game. Yeah, it was an overtime match.
What is that feeling to win a tournament with all your loved ones there, your family and supporters?
It's really emotional, like I tend to cry at any tournament we win. And granted, I'm a big crier, so that doesn't say that much, but it's hard to win tournaments. A lot of professional players will never win a tournament.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's the truth. The reality of, in the last 4 years, 4 teams have won tournaments. And
wow.
In the last 4 years, have been almost 20 tournaments. So it's hard to win. And a lot of it is just relief, like I have chills right now just saying that. Like a lot of it is just, we're done. Like we got out of here, and it's interesting because like part of what it takes to win tournaments is just the intangibles, like it's things going your way. It's controlling the things that you have control over and having faith in the things you don't, and that is a really interesting concept when it comes to competing. Like a lot of people think you have to control everything, and some of the mastery of being a champion is knowing you can't control everything and actually being at peace with that. It takes a long time to understand the concept like that. And I would say, for me, the last several years, that's been one for me to further develop my relationship with the uncontrollable, and it's been lovely for me because then I'm relating my understanding and how that has allowed me to excel in this thing and trying to translate that same understanding to all the other things I'm doing in my life. So yeah, a relief. It's obviously a very emotional high. It's a beautiful experience. I'm crying, hugging my teammates who we have spent a considerable amount of time trying to excel in something, and we all know that everybody gives up things to be there too. We all have families, we all have other things that are in our lives that we're doing, and we all spend a considerable amount of time trying to do this. And, when I think about like the amount of time I've spent over the course of my life doing this, it's substantial.
Sure.
To be with a group of people that, have kind of put that same level of ethic or work ethic into it as you, and to have the outcome that you'd hoped or wished for, it's a surreal moment. It's a surreal experience.
Yeah.
And then the funny thing about it is the next day, it's like nobody really cares. It's your heroes for a Sunday, your heroes for a few hours, a Sunday afternoon, and you have the memory for sure. But like the next day, it's like, okay, you guys won that tournament, but it's over.
There's a few things that you said in that response that really stood out to me. One of them was that there's a lot of variables in what it takes to win as a team in paintball. And you mentioned there's just so much that you don't have control over. And before we started this recording, we drew a little affirmation card, and yours was about control.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And you'd mentioned a quote that you had maybe posted at one point on your Instagram page or something. And I wanted to know if you could share that quote with me again.
Okay, let me try to remember it. It was, relax. Nothing is under control. And it's funny because I drew that card a half hour ago, and it really resonated with me. I got the chills immediately because I was brought back to a moment in time where I had posted a belief that I have, which is to just relax. It's life, and again, you cannot control everything. So why am I gonna focus or even worry about that kind of stuff? So I'm gonna focus on the things that I can control, and largely that's how I show up, my preparation, and if I can help somebody on my team.
Yeah, it's such an interesting concept to take into consideration because so many people are grasping onto control of so much in their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never done that before ever, but
yeah.
It does. It makes me reflect on how much I'm trying to control in my life at any given moment. And some of it's so unconscious, like how much I'm trying to control and manipulate in my favor. And it's just something to be happy to be aware of, to like gain that awareness of like, oh wow, I'm totally trying to take over something that is beyond my power. And also maybe recognize what it would take for me or for one to actually relax and let that control piece go. It's so challenging for so many people.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and don't get me wrong, it's a practice, like sure, there's moments in time where I did want to control a lot. And I would argue that, for me, that has been a fun lesson to learn, at least to be sitting where I am now and what I understand about that concept, because I understand the way I was before I really knew it well. And it was a bit of control and a little bit of like trying to oversee everything, and thinking that if I could have my hand in everything, it would be the most beneficial thing. And it's also interesting too, because like I see it in other people too, because I've been made more aware of it. So I'm like, oh, wow, I see what's going on there. And again, like, everybody's got their journey, and I would argue that everyone's journey is for them. So like they've got to learn those lessons, and you can kind of give them the crumbs, but they got to do the things for themselves. That's really the way to learn things, I think.
Yeah. The practice of getting used to or willing to feel true surrender of something towards something is quite a feat. It gives me the chills because I don't always want to surrender.
Yeah, that's fair. No,
I'm a fighter.
Yeah, that's fair.
Another thing that you had said in that response was like, you've spent so much time over the course of the last 18 years with paintball dedicated to the sport, dedicated to your game, dedicated to the team, and more or less like having to sacrifice a lot, and that the team all makes their own sacrifices. What do you think has been one of the biggest sacrifices you've had to make?
The opportunity cost of my time. Again, for so long, I was gone every weekend. Did I sacrifice partying? I mean, a lot, which I don't know if that's much of a sacrifice. I'm making up for it now. But relations for sure. I mean, it's tough to be in serious committed relationships and being gone all the time, for a good 12-year stint, I'd be gone like 35 weeks a year.
Yeah.
And,
what are you gone doing when you're gone?
Traveling for tournaments or practice.
Okay, got it.
So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if I'm going to Europe, it'd be like a whole, 7, 8, 9 days. So that was a large part of my 20s. It wasn't until COVID when I stopped traveling internationally. Really, I haven't done any European tournaments, and I could always do that again, but I'm just in a different phase of my life now.
Sure,
I met my wife and just don't really want to be gone as much. But yeah, I would say that the things that a lot of people do with their time, weddings, parties, birthdays, family events, like I was gone for a sizable amount of things in my 20s. To explain the way in which like I wanted to be the best, like I was like straight edge for 10 years because I didn't want to be distracted at all. Like I just was a student, and that's how much I was thinking about the game and thinking about what I could learn and how I could be better, So like for a long time, I was really devout, really just trying to understand every possible aspect that could give me even the smallest edge.
I've read so many books. I've learned from so many incredible personal development teachers. And, one of the things that really stands out to me about becoming a master at something is the time. It's the many, 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 many hours. It's the blood, sweat, and tears. It's, things that you're mentioning, like dedication, devotion, focus. And that is a big sacrifice. At a different phase of my life, there was definitely drive to be the best at something. And I think back to, my former business. I think back to different relationships that I just wanted to be the best and ultimately just be the best version of myself. And that's led me down a path of just a lot of different personal development learning, right? Like a lot of different workshops, a lot of different teachers, a lot of different books, and a lot of just my own internal self-work. And through that have come a lot of beneficial practices that I've incorporated into my life, different rituals. I really would love to hear from you if there are certain rituals or practices that you have that you incorporate into your life that have really kind of brought you along further down the path of your own personal development outside of paintball.
One of the ones that I think is of the utmost importance is understanding philosophy and also the way in which your emotional state can influence your decision making. For whatever reason, I really couldn't tell you why now because it's been so long. I mean, I started getting into that topic when I was like probably around 20 years old. And I understood it to be a big benefit to be able to manage the way in which my feelings, my emotions while I was playing, because then I'm able to make better decisions, right? And I kind of went to the nth degree with understanding at least my emotions and using that as essentially to just always be making the best possible decision when I'm playing paintball, no matter what the circumstance was, whether I was at a big disadvantage, whether I was in a heightened state of awareness or, my adrenaline's flowing really good, or I'm just like utterly exhausted at the end of a tournament, right? Like I still got to make the best decision I could if I want the best outcome. So like that was a simple, thing. And then obviously like when you're talking about like being able to manage your emotions or understanding your emotional state of being, that's applicable in every day of my life. Like the pursuit of maximum joy, like that's in a way also a philosophy is essentially like everybody has shit handed to them.
Yeah.
And if I can enjoy the shit that gets handed to me, I won. I think that's why I'm always laughing and smiling. Like I'm hard pressed to have a tough day. Even if it is actually a tough day, I'm like, yeah, it was a tough day, but I had a great time, Like I really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thinking back to you mentioning that you cry a lot, and then hearing now that you've developed this really great awareness of your emotions, I don't feel like that's a very common thing for a lot of men. And, this might be a generalization or a stereotype, but it seems to me that most men are not very tapped into their emotions. There's a few primary emotions that everybody, I think, experiences. But for guys, it doesn't seem like it goes much farther beyond, for a lot of guys, just kind of even keel, almost stoic. Anger seems to be a common one for a lot of guys. But there's not a lot of sadness expressed or disappointment expressed or even joy and bliss expressed for a lot of guys. And I wonder how you have come to this point of kind of cultivating this really great connection with your emotional self. How did you start to develop an awareness of your emotions? Like how did that happen for you? Because I think it's really challenging for a lot of men to really even identify what they're feeling.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because like it's been on autopilot for me for so long, and I can't say like this is what started that for me, but I would say like part of it was recognizing things and genuinely believing that by honoring my emotions that the world was just happening for me because I was able and willing to allow that to happen. And so, and I don't know if this was just something I made up in my head, but I felt like, okay, I'd honor a feeling, and whether it was good, bad, or the other, it would end up favoring me in some way. And maybe I was making a connection that actually wasn't there, but that's the way I was seeing it, is I was seeing a positive correlation to recognizing emotions and them showing up for me in kind of intangible ways in my life, right? Whether that was just the things I was doing, or even on the paintball field maybe, or like making a connection that I felt like would be beneficial for me to understand. I was linking them to honoring my emotions in a way. And so I just became very comfortable doing that. And like I said, I had this belief system that just sought these things out as a benefit no matter what. I really, really just believed that they were good for me. And nowadays, like, I almost look at them as synchronicities, I feel like I'm tapping into something that is very difficult to explain, but I just believe it to be good or great even. And, now again, like I make this connection to like synchronicities, and I feel these things now. And I think that's because I've been doing this for a long time.
There's a couple of things that you said that I kind of lean on also. And one of them was like the belief that life is happening for me. And I definitely lean on that belief a lot through a lot of like the amazing things that happen in my life, but also some of my challenges.
Yeah.
This is all happening for me, and I don't know why, but I might learn the reason why one day, and I'm just going to allow this to unfold. And it's a part of that surrender piece of just like letting life unfold the way it is without trying to like take control and manipulate everything around us, which, for me might be a struggle from time to time. I can look back on some of my hardships and look back on some of the difficulties throughout my life that I did not understand at the time, and they felt devastating at the time.
Of course.
I can look back on that today and say, like, there were so many silver linings from that experience. There was so much growth that occurred for me. That was this catalyst that created incredible change in my life that without, I would be a completely different person today. And so it's really great to hear that belief resonates with you as well, because I do feel as though it is something that can really stand in the way when you think that life is happening to you. It can really be a hindrance to your growth, your personal evolution, if you really believe that, you're under attack or you're the victim of
victim
life,
mentality.
life circumstances.
Right. Yeah, and again, just like you, like I've had these moments in time in my life where I was, under duress, or just things are seemingly very challenging, and again, I'm looking back at all those moments in time, and I'm like, geez, thank God, like, I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have those, and I mean, I just know how much I've learned from those experiences.
I've witnessed you in a few realms. I've never got to see you play paintball, but I know you're a badass at it, obviously, world champion several times, whatever. But I have heard you play the piano, and I've witnessed you. I haven't got to watch you go out and play golf, but I've heard stories. And from what I know about you, you just excel at the things that you do. Like, you're really good at a lot of things.
It's so funny because a lot of people would say that, or they'd say like, you're natural. And I'm like, I look at me being a natural as the way in which my brain processes things, which is very much not natural. That was training for 20 some years.
You're a natural at figuring things out.
Exactly. Like and honestly, no, not a natural. that's what I've been practicing for the last 20 years, like I've been doing that since, 25 years. Yeah. Something when I was, 23 years, I've been trying to solve problems as fast as better than you, so like that's what I've been doing. And so again, that's what's awesome about any pursuit of excellence, is that you don't just pursue excellence in that subject. it's relatable to every other thing you do. So like for me, when I'm learning how to do something at a very high level, I'm learning how to do anything at a high level. You know, I'm understanding, okay, what's needless information, what is garbage, a waste of time to think about, and what's important, right? And that understanding that is really important if you're trying to get good at something fast.
What feels really important to you right now? I mean, you're in this really interesting point where you're kind of, it feels like to me, like you're just kind of winding down with the paintball career and slowly closing that chapter or that book, it feels like.
Yeah.
What feels important to you right now?
I would say right now, nurturing my relationships, you know, all of them, my friends, my family, my lover. The biggest problem I have to solve is like how to create more time for myself. I'll let you know how that goes. That'll be a fun one to figure out. And I guess, yeah, what this next phase of life looks like for me. You know, I have been winding down my paintball career for years. To be honest, it's crazy, but like I don't actually practice anymore. Like I go to our team practices, but like I only I only play paintball when I'm at a team practice and in a tournament. And that's kind of wild to think about for me. And in a way, it's like I look at it as kind of cool because I'm very much relevant, but at the same time, I also feel a little bit of shame or guilt because I'm not actually trying my best. You know, my teammates are okay with that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I am. But yeah, I'm curious how the next couple of years will go for me with the added weekends.
How do you want to spend your time?
I think you're aware of this. I've been really enjoying music the last several years, and a new hobby I'm really looking forward to spending some time doing is learning to produce music and making people dance. You know, I love dancing. I love music, and I'm looking forward to sharing that. That's definitely something I look forward to. And then again, developing my relationships. You know, at this phase of my life, you have, you know, many new relationships over the last 5 years, and you start making new meaningful connections, and really just nurturing those and figuring out more of those is something I really look forward to.
It seems like you moving into music production could be like I think for me, it'll be a really fascinating journey to watch you go down because to me, it's so systematic. I played the piano as a child, not well, but I remember learning how to read music from sheet music and now seeing the evolution of music production. Like, for example, my brother has a production studio in Southern Oregon, and I went down to see it shortly after it had like kind of, you know, he spent a long time building this. And after he finished, I went down to check it out, and it blew my mind just like how much equipment, not just like recording equipment, but like all of the electronics that go into it to be able to actually like master the music and manipulate the sounds. And like, it just blew my mind. There's so much to be learned.
There's
in that
a lot
world.
of stuff. Oh yeah.
And just hearing how you are so good at figuring things out, I'm like, oh, this could be really, really fun to watch you figure out how to produce music.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it will be. I'm really looking forward to it. It's also interesting too because, like, you know, I'm at a stage in my life where I'm not a kid, so it's not like I can just spend all my time, you know, really focusing on something. You know, like I have things to do. You know,
totally.
I got to take the trash out sometimes. I got to wash dishes occasionally. I'm kind of like laughing about that change in circumstance for me, but you know, I do believe in myself enough that if I put in the work, like I can do anything I want. You know, I really believe that. But again, there's that whole work thing and the time thing. So you got to figure those things out and make those happen if you wish to get there.
Yeah, I mean, you know what that journey's like. I mean,
yeah, I've seen it before for sure. Yeah.
So for somebody that is really interested in pursuing a passion and getting really good at it, you know, maybe a young person, maybe somebody that's in their teenage years, or even somebody that is in later years or midlife, like what would be some advice that you would give to somebody that is really interested in something, has a desire to get really good or amazing at it and actually pursue it? What would you say to them?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I would say. I think one of the most important things is being honest with yourself. If you're not honest with yourself, you are not going to be able to have those tough conversations that make meaningful progress out of you. Understanding that you're here, and if you want to be here, like you're either there or you're not, and if you're not, there's reasons for it. So
be real about it.
Right. Another one is, like that, even that simple idea I was talking about earlier, where it's like trying to understand the difference between needless information and stuff that will make a tangible difference, move the needle for you. Like trying to figure those things out. And the better you start figuring them out, you're going to start ramping that up. You're going to start seeing the difference, and you're going to stop even paying attention to this kind of stuff. And you're only going to be looking at stuff that's making the needle move. And, you can't escape the effort involved, like that's the truth. It takes, if you want to be like really good at something, it takes a lot of effort, it's time, effort, thought, and one thing I would also say that I don't think it's talked about enough is there's a lot more than just like the physical action of doing something. When I look at my peers and the way in which they train, I train so much differently than they do. Mm-hmm. They go to the field and they do drills and they'll shoot at targets all day long. Mm-hmm. And with all due respect, that's great. But if I'm making better decisions than you, you don't stand a chance. And that's really what controls your trajectory is your mind. Like it's everything's mental. Understanding how to do everything at a better level is just your mentality. It's your attitude, it's your mentality. It's how your depth of thought, how far are you going to go with your thoughts? That's what's going to make you good at something.
Yeah, what comes to mind for me is as you're talking about like your thoughts and your mindset, I've done a lot of coaching over the last 5 years, and for so many of the clients that I've worked with, the mindset gets the best of them. It's like self-doubt will creep in so intensely, so profoundly that it just stops them in their tracks. And my initial training with coaching with Brooke Castillo, she really operates off of using this model that our thoughts can really create the emotions that we feel in our body. And then the emotions are what really fuel all the actions that we take. So if you are having these thoughts that are maybe like, oh, I really screwed that up. Like, who am I to be even trying this? I'm no good at this. That obviously is going to create a lot of self-doubt for you. And then what actions do you take from a place of self-doubt? Maybe you stop, maybe you quit, maybe you just ruminate on how bad you are.
Yeah, or you try to control everything.
Right? Yeah. And things that are beyond your control, it will never work out for you.
Right.
It's so important to maintain a mindset of belief in whatever outcome you're trying to create for yourself in your life. Because as soon as you start doubting it, it's going to bring you the opposite.
Even the subconscious level of belief too, it's funny because I have Paintball World Cup, which may or may not be my last World Cup, coming up here in a couple of weeks. And I remember a funny little thing we did last year, or you helped me with. It was just a silly idea I had in my head, but I believed it would be helpful for me last year. And it must have been, a few weeks before World Cup, and I called you and I said, hey, dude, can you help me with something for World Cup in my preparation? And I made this call it was a small group of my friends. It was my wife, 3 other friends, one of which being my teammate. And essentially what I asked you to do was to imagine we're at Christmas and talking about the day after World Cup had happened. So we're in the future talking about something that had already happened, but it's also in the future. And you're telling the story of the conversation you and I had on that Monday about us winning the day before, which hadn't happened yet. It was just a practice, an idea that popped into my head, and I wanted you to help me do this. Anyways, we did, and we'd planned this conversation on Monday, and I called you on Monday, and we celebrated us winning World Cup, just like hopefully you had been picturing it and I had been picturing it, as if I was going to tell it on Christmas morning to somebody else.
Yeah. And it worked, y'all. He won World Cup.
And we won
the
World
team
Cup.
won.
And I don't know if we would have won if it hadn't been for that. I don't know, but I believed that was some sort of reason for why we won. I might be stupid or ignorant or whatever, but I believe that.
Yeah.
And at this point, I've only done that one time and it worked, so I'm just going to stick with that one.
Well, I really think our beliefs are what are creating our reality.
Me too.
Right? If we believe it, then it's real. And not everybody else believes it. It's not real for them.
Right.
That's okay.
That's all right with me.
We can live in different realities, and I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
That was actually such a really beautiful exercise to do with you, and so awesome to have that phone call after you won the World Cup, because I was like following along like on social media, and I was trying to catch it live streamed, and like I was just so jazzed because I knew it was coming, and being asked to be of a support to you in that way felt like so good for my heart. I was just like, I would love to do this with you. I would love to support you. I would love to visualize this with you and like put myself in the emotional state of just being so proud and stoked for my homie.
Right.
And to be able to have that come to fruition in exactly the way that we anticipated. And
yeah. And again, like that's to give you credit too, because I can't just ask that of anybody either. Like I have to ask somebody that can be there with me, like that can resonate with that type of a very foreign concept. And I asked you for a reason, and you know, that's important. It was important to me. Obviously, it was just a really cool thing. And you know, it was just so interesting because I think about that idea, and again, maybe we wouldn't have won if we didn't do that. Maybe and then you think about further, like, well, how else could I potentially use something like that concept to manifest or in my benefactor, you know, in the future?
Yeah, like what else can I fuel with my emotional state and my visualization to come to fruition for what I desire for my future? Like what else can I create? Well, our time is coming to a close. And before we wrap up this conversation, I have one last question for you. Being in the place that you're in today, having gone through a lot of trials and having a lot of success, what are some words of advice that you would give to yourself while you were going through your greatest hardship or your greatest challenge in your life?
Yeah, I have a mantra that it's kind of just so strong in my subconscious, and I just really embody it well now. But it's no matter what happens, I know is good, so I let go of expectations. For me personally, like really practicing that is just super beneficial. I've seen it play out so many times in my favor. And again, it's circumstance. You know, everybody gets in a car accident at some point, and it seemingly sucks, but you don't know that it didn't save you from something much worse or put you on just a completely different trajectory in general. You could meet somebody that would change your life at the body shop or on the way, you know, dealing with that, you know. But yeah, no matter what happens, I know is good, so I let go of expectation. It's it's been just a super powerful one for me, and one of my favorite mantras to remind myself about. But I will say in general, it's definitely in my subconscious. It's so easily relatable to me now. And also when you think about it objectively, I can't think of a better way to look at something, you know? Like, even if something sucks, I know it's good for me. Like, how better can you respond? There's nothing else to really say about it. Like, cool, sweet, you know, drink lemonade.
Thank you so much, Archie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. If people want to learn more about you or follow you along on the journey, whatever comes next, how can people start paying attention?
Yeah, sure. I'm not as active on social media as I once was, but I do have an Instagram page. It's KID_Arch. And that was like a moniker when I was a child playing paintball. And that's kind of it. I also have a couple of different paintball brands, which you can find on my Instagram as well. But that's the best way to kind of keep in touch. And I still do post occasionally and share some paintball stuff and some real life stuff too. And I've been kind of feeling a call to be a little more out there lately. So I'm sure I will be soon enough.
Check him out, y'all. Kid_Arch. Thanks again, Archie.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today on the BZen Wellness Podcast. We hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to continue on your personal quest.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. And if you want to learn more or dive deeper into these topics, visit our website and follow us on social media.
Until then, friends, breathe deep, take some time for yourself, and remember, you are already whole. Goodbye, dear hearts.